because in the end, it just like trickles down to the one thing, and that's because I'm a woman who isn't covered. So my point is not validated. Like my point is inaccurate, and it's like a propaganda, mostly American based, and it has no logic, it has no credibility, just because I'm a woman who is educated. So the amount of abuse, the amount of threats I've received in the past 7 years, it's like insane. It's like incredibly dangerous. I feel like I have fought with so many influencers online who are primarily making content in the name of roasting. And that roasting is more of like making horrible comedy, targeting women in particular about their bodies, their face, the way they talk, the way they exist. And if you would call them out about like gender-based violence online, people don't care. They'll be like, oh, it's not that deep. You're just making an issue out of everything and you're crazy, you're psychotic. Just the average rhetorics that people use for women who are more opinionated.
Welcome to Normalize the Conversation by Inspiring My Generation. I'm your host, Francesca Reicherter. Today, I'm joined by Rooshan Alam, a psychologist and mental health advocate based in Pakistan, who uses her voice to challenge misinformation, reduce stigma, and advocate for emotional wellness, even when it comes at a personal cost. In today's conversation, we're talking about grief in all its forms, not just the loss of a person, but also the loss of relationships, identity, and the versions of ourselves we outgrow along the way. We also dive into the growing issue of mental health misinformation online, including myths about therapy and medication, and how social media can shape the way people understand or misunderstand healing. Rooshan also shares her lived experience navigating online harassment, misogyny, and threats simply for speaking publicly about mental health. Together, we explore what it means to stand in your truth, why grief is often misunderstood, and how advocacy and awareness can create change, even in difficult environments. Rooshan, thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited for our conversation, but before we begin, I want to check in. How are you really?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. I just had a busy week. We had the Eid holidays come up. That's like one of the times in the year where we get together with family and friends and we just like spend time. This is more of a meaty Eid, so we actually distribute a lot of meat to the underprivileged who do not get to consume meat throughout the year.
That sounds like such a wonderful time. And I love the idea of bringing food to the underprivileged. We don't make time, right, to really support others who aren't in as great of a situation as we are. So that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just one of those days where you think about how privileged you are as a human being living in a country like this at times. And definitely, it gives you the opportunity to reflect on better values and how to be a better person. But it's just like, sometimes people tend to forget that these sort of Eid holidays can be really detrimental for others who do not have like certain family members present for this year. So of course it can be really tough for a lot of others, but yeah, this is something I feel like no one talks about in our society when it comes to like grief and parental loss or, losing a sibling or a loved one. They tend to get like tougher when it comes to like, such celebratory occasions. I'm not sure why people need to, shut other people's grief moment off. Like just straight up just tell them to get over it and it'll just be fine because that's what is expected of life. But again, grief is such a unique moment and unique experience for everyone, but shutting down and repressing feelings and telling people to just snap out of it is not productive.
I know it's really not. And when you think back to conversations like you wish you had earlier, situations and experiences you've had, right? Do you ever look back on them and are like, wow, if only there wasn't that stigma there. If only people understood just a little bit more. If only someone had talked to me about it, just a tiny bit to prepare me, wow, things would have been different.
Yeah, I totally agree. And especially when it comes from, like, grief doesn't have to be someone you lost to, like, the natural process of death. It can be like losing a friendship or ending a friendship, or like, ending things with a partner and ending things with a parent. You can process grief in those moments as well. And sometimes people really forget that these relationships do last, longer than a lot for some like other people in terms of like, friendships. So sometimes they'll go like, oh, so what, you knew that person for like 10 years? It's okay. You'll find another one and you'll just spend 10 more years and you'll forget about this new person, this current person. But that's not how it is, because you build so many memories along the way. And that's how grief just like, likes to feed on the memories. And I just feel like people tend to just sweep that away, and they don't want to like sit with their heavy, difficult feelings because they were never taught to sit with their heavy feelings.
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. And also the grief of like your identity and when you're changing too, right? When you step into new roles, or you move, or you just, when you do meet new people, maybe you shift a little bit. Like as life goes on, you change so many different times. You grow, you evolve. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Also the grief of identity and like who I used to be. That's been a really tough one for me. And not being able to sit in my emotions, like you said, and that like desire to change others so that, because we all have our own perspectives on what life should look like and how we should feel and what we should do, right? And a lot of times we want to change others to fit into our perspective. And then we have this idea, you said, that we can't make mistakes, that we have to be perfect. There's so much pressure online to show up a certain way. And it has such a toll on your mental health.
Definitely. The content that I make is mostly like correcting misinformation, disinformation on social media platforms. When it comes to Pakistani, this is not us like, judging their entire like identity over one piece of information. I feel like people can be given benefit of the doubt. But if there's like a repetitive pattern, if there's like a serial way of like, presenting misrepresentation and disinformation, like dangerous information that can actually cause real harm to society. And again, especially for women and girls, because that's particularly one of the focuses that I do on my platform, is to talk about violence against women and girls. So that is a context I feel like people tend to, have more of a like a contradictory facet of a perception, if you will, meaning that, sometimes they'll be like, okay, accountability is important. We shouldn't be doing this and we should be better humans. But when it comes to, channels which are promoting misogynistic content creation, and you're trying to highlight that, they'll be like, oh, but this is free speech. And this is just like, you can't just identify this whole person being a horrible human being just because they're making fun of women. That can also get these women, targeted by actual potential, online abusers. So this is how like, people tend to do black and white thinking. They forget that there's like also like a gray area. Like you can be a good person in your non-social media lifestyle, but you can still have the responsibility of a content creator to make content that doesn't harm a certain community in your society when it comes to like, gender-based targeted cyber harassment. We as Pakistanis, we eat up all the American politics a lot. It's frustrating. Now in the States, people do, tend to forget that they have the privilege, I feel like, with licensed professionals who do get like training about like certain updates within the medical society and psychiatric society. But when it comes to Pakistan, unfortunately, they like to pander towards the concept of anti-medical programs. The whole, hoax around the medical doctors are sellouts for the big pharma, people who don't go to medical professionals because they think that medical professionals are out to destroy their lives. And unfortunately, people do take advantage of the vulnerabilities of people who are trying to get themselves better. So I feel I have immense empathy for people who are trying to work on themselves and trying to find solutions that might work for their issue. But again, when it comes to the whole big pharma rhetoric and all these autism is caused by vaccines, again, this is such a huge catastrophe and controversy, and people tend to forget that these issues are not set in a vacuum. There are people who are out there propagating this and getting profitable income from all of this because they're preying upon the vulnerabilities of others. And it's really sad because first and foremost, autism is not a disease. People don't even understand this is not a contagious disease, and it's purely it has more of a genetic. It's really alarming because we would have thought that over the last decade there might be some significant improvement in mental health stigma.
It creates this extra stigma too, right?
So then so many people end up not seeking any support. And there's that idea of that magic pill, quick fix. And then there's the fear of seeking medication that might help you. And it's such a double-edged sword, right? Sometimes it's I just need the medication to fix me. And sometimes it's I can't take anything or do anything because I don't want anyone to know. And you end up not getting the full support that you need, because I'm such an advocate for taking medication that's right for you and going to your doctor and talking about different options and seeing what side effects are livable for you. However, I'm also an advocate for incorporating, if you can can afford to, therapy, right? Or other coping skills, self-care practices, just things that you can do to support yourself as well, because medication is great. However, it's not really getting to the root of the problem, right? So then you're still going through it. You're just a little more, for me at least, I can say I'm more leveled out, but I'm still going through it. And if I didn't have therapy, if I didn't have coping skills, self-care practices, I didn't learn all these stuff, I would not, even being kind of brought to a baseline, I would not be able to maintain that. It's so frustrating to me that so many people are afraid to talk to a mental health professional, to seek out medication if it's right for them, to really learn more about what they can do for themselves.
And especially when it comes to the US credibility. So like I said, the Pakistani population usually likes to look towards what Americans are doing and what advances are they making in the field of psychology or psychiatry or medical sciences. So this is where the Tylenol and autism scare came from. And I remember when we distinctively we had a HIV crisis in Pakistan, and the government was trying to promote getting the vaccines for HIV or something of that sort, but the backlash was insane. They were constantly saying that the American government might be, trying to poison our children or trying to incorporate more abnormalities, making us sick, and some of them actually associated with religious discrimination. They're oh my God, this is something that not even accepted in our religion, which was quite alarming. So they tried their level best to not get vaccinated, and ended up actually abusing women who were those workers who went on these remote places to provide vaccines to their kids, and they got attacked by the people over there. So the whole predatory relationship of pseudoscience is so extreme that people end up harming actual people who are trying to help you and make you a better human being, have a healthier lifestyle. But again, this is just really sad. They're constantly just ignoring the side effects of what happens when you are unvaccinated. But you can't change people's beliefs if they don't want to change them. And that's just a very sad situation, unfortunately.
It really is. And that dis and misinformation is struggling here. Is so frustrating, because once it picks up and that becomes the main message, it's so hard to really begin to debunk it and make sure that people have access to the information that they need. But also it sounds like it becomes dangerous even, especially in Pakistan. As someone who is going out of her way to debunk that misinformation, what has that journey been like for you when it sounds like the structure and culture as a whole is working against you in many ways?
Okay, that's a very heavily loaded question. So like I mentioned, I've frequently speak about like how women are targeted, girls are targeted, children are targeted on social media. I've been like speaking mostly about like the dangers of exploitation of children online from child influencers. One of the main backlashes that I've been like facing is that they constantly pander to the idea of me being like an American agent just because I have an accent. So that's also an issue. So I tend to speak in more of an Urdu language so I can like, relate to them, but that doesn't help either. It's because in the end, it just like trickles down to the one thing, and that's because I'm a woman who isn't covered. So my point is not validated. Like my point is inaccurate, and it's like a propaganda, mostly American based, and it has no logic, it has no credibility, just because I'm a woman who is educated. So the amount of abuse, the amount of threats I've received in the past 7 years, it's like insane. I don't even know how to answer this. It's like incredibly dangerous. I feel like I have fought with so many influencers online who are primarily making content in the name of roasting. And that roasting is more of like making horrible comedy, targeting women in particular about their bodies, their face, the way they talk, the way they exist. And if you would call them out about like gender-based violence online, people don't care. They'll be like, oh, it's not that deep. You're just making an issue out of everything, and you're crazy, you're psychotic. Just the average rhetorics that people use for women who are more opinionated and, logical. So it is, it's not been a good journey, but I've had a lot of other people on the positive side come and reach out to me and tell me how I actually did to help them to get out of actual abusive relationships. I had no idea my impact was that wholesome, I guess. Like from abusive relationship, they've learned to speak up for themselves and get help, actual like professional help, and get out of like abusive scenarios. And there have been like absolutely wonderful like international accredited licensed psychologists reach out to me and tell me how much they admire my work of like advocacy, and how like I've been fighting for women's rights in a country like this where my own life can be compromised. But it's not that easy. It's very difficult. Unfortunately, the kind of content that is more heavily targeted and most heavily like given viewership to is like dehumanizing human beings, especially women, and that is not my content. I like to show the reality of what our society is, suffering towards, and that is also like highlighting clinical psychologists in Pakistan. Like I mentioned, we don't have licensing bodies or actual ethical committees that do a check and balance. So I also like target those professionals in my own like community, where they also have attacked me personally, made videos upon videos on me. And it's been a very difficult ride, because when you're one person trying to change the system, then everyone is against you. And it's a very like, I would just say that I wouldn't recommend a lot of women doing it, but I really would prefer people to like, come and support women who are doing as much as they can to make a better environment online for women to exist. Because unfortunately, what people think the misogynistic context within our own society that is existing in a social term is also getting like leaked into the social media domains, and it is not getting controlled at all. It's just getting like super disgusting and repulsive. And psychologically, it is so damaging. I've seen so many women delete their accounts because of this. They've actually made videos that we would be just like making videos about dresses and normal clothing articles, and we will get abused in the comment section for just existing. So it is that serious. So the online gender-based violence against women in Pakistan is just expanding every second, and there's nothing that is being done on it.
That is so disheartening and heartbreaking. I do really, I want to say, appreciate the fact that you kept going and kept doing this, because like you said, the amount of people you've been able to help, I can't imagine all of the threats and the comments really beating you down, creating fear, being able to still show up and try to help people and create these conversations that people without that literally do not have any access to. So I just want to say that I really appreciate who you are.
Thank you.
That takes a lot of strength and courage, and it's just incredible.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. And thank you so much for reaching out to me and getting me on this podcast to actually give my voice an opportunity to be heard on an international level. So more people and women who are feminists, who are fighting for a cause, can understand that there are women like me in a country like this that are trying to survive as well. Like there has been times that I've had like little girls who are, teenagers coming up in my DMs to tell me that they really want to be like me in the future of like, standing up against like harassment and cyberbullying, and they want to take up space. And that just makes me feel so happy, because the moment I hear someone saying that they are not afraid anymore to exist, that just makes me feel like a better person. And also, I've been finding like clients like this as well, because in a country like this, in Pakistani society, mostly like clinicians are heavily like, pandering towards the conservative mindset. But I, as a clinician, I actually work towards the paradigm of scientific knowledge and scientific evidence, highly like, ethically like, programmed, and more of a updated like paradigms that I use and modalities I use in my practice. So this is what has been helping me find like, clients who always wanted to go into therapy without the fear of like, being judged and condescended or their information being leaked out. They've been like telling me that we have seen you fight on the internet, and this is like one of the reasons why we want you as our therapist, because we feel like that this is a place where at least we won't be judged to the point that we will never be coming back to therapy. So thank you so much for giving us another perspective that people like you exist. And yes, you are fighting the system, because which is, if any psychologist is out there who is not fighting the system, who is not being political, who is not like actually trying to make changes from their own end, they need to step up, because psychology and therapy is nothing without us actually holding these systems accountable. So this is like a huge deal within our scope of practice. And that is why my public advocacy is out there. I want people to see who I am, what I believe in. And when they choose me, this is who I am, what they're going for. So more of like, not your generic, traditional blank slate psychologist, more of someone who is actual human living in the same society as you and trying to fight the system and trying to make it better.
It's so important, because we often see people who like to complain about the system and feel defeated by the system without actively going out and do anything to improve the system. And I get how disheartening it can be and how easy it is to feel defeated when you're working against a system that's out there to make it feel impossible for you and difficult for you. But there's, even if you aren't comfortable, going online and posting your face, right? Talking about it. There's other things you can do. And we have to really check in with ourselves and see the impact we want to make, and find one small actionable step that we can take to show up in this world in a meaningful way, because it's so important. I want to go back to what you said about the teens who are like reaching out to you. What advice do you have for the next generation who wants to get involved, wants to use their voice, isn't afraid to exist? What advice do you have for them to really go out and embody that in the world?
Absolutely. So I just have one advice for women, particularly coming from my country, who are scared that, people are not going to listen. They're going to attack them. Listen, people are going to have a problem with anything that you do. You can be the most perfect version of yourself. You can be the most conforming individual of the society, and they will still have issues with your existence. So it's better to, speak your mind and stand your ground. And if people are trying to invalidate you, that's fine, because not everyone is going to love you. And that is my advice, that people just need to obviously be safe. I'm not saying go into the lion's den and start playing with wild animals. I'm just saying to always know that if your truth has a lot of facts and evidence, and you know that you are right, and this is where you draw the line of other people trying to bully you, then of course stand on your ground. And neutrality of the people, they think neutrality is going to be helpful in any way. Absolutely not. So in societies like these, people's lived experiences always get shut down. So being neutral and being a mental health advocate, I feel like it's not the right match, because if you're going to be silent, then of course you're also going to get attacked and you're going to be harmed by the system. So less conforming and also questioning is such a huge, important, unique skill to have. And if you actually want to make a difference and make a better society, it starts with our own self and how we understand how these macro to micro levels of advocacy are going to change the society that we live in. I know it's going to take a lot of work, and I sometimes also feel hopeless, and being hopeless is not like an issue. You're a human being. You're allowed to feel disheartened, hopeless. You're allowed to feel like you want to give up. But remember, these are just setbacks. Take a step more to relax and think about your mental health, and then take a pause if you want to, and try again. If you just give up, these people are going to win and nothing's going to be changed, unfortunately.
Exactly. And it's so important that we find ways to show up in a way that feels comfortable and safe for us, because everyone is different and not everyone is comfortable with the public advocacy, but that doesn't mean that you can't do something. And I think that's such a big thing, right? Even if it's just providing resources and information to your local community, to your friends, to your family, your peers, all of that makes a difference. So it doesn't have to be this large scale thing if you aren't comfortable with it. If that's not for you, that's okay. But you can still make a difference, right? With that, sharing more accurate information with your friends and family by resharing your content, right? And letting them know, like, look, I saw this video, it might be really helpful for you. It's small actions that we can do, or it's really big actions we can do. It's totally up to you. But if you're not able and comfortable and feel safe to do the big actions, doesn't mean that those small actions don't matter, because they're still big actions when you make a difference in one person's life.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better. I feel like people tend to forget that even like sharing someone's content that you find helpful, it actually helps a lot of other people, because again, you like something which is going to make a difference in other people's lives, then definitely it doesn't even take like a second to like reshare. And that has been such a comforting thing to listen to when people tell me that they have been following my content and they've been sharing my content into their WhatsApp family groups of like family members who are boomers, and they're trying to make them like listen to it. They're trying to make them understand about what's happening in our Pakistani context and misogynistic like societies, and how to not be a misogynistic person. So this like getting the conversation going is so wholesome, and it actually gives me more of a encouragement to continue what I'm doing.
It's gotta hold on to hope. That's really one of the biggest things we can do, is hold on to hope, and then to do things to increase hope for others. So I really appreciate all that you do. For those listening, how can they follow your content and be able to take it in and share it with others?
Oh, absolutely. So I post content on Instagram, and my content is honestly like you can find it easily on Instagram by searching Rooshan Alam, psychologist, or the Brown Freud. If you feel like you are suffering from something like this, that you also want to be like an activist and you want to start somewhere, you can always like look at my content and see how I retaliate with like hate and stuff, and see how I'm still going even after 7 years. Even when my parents were like, Rooshan, you don't need to do this anymore. What are you getting out of this? Honestly, I don't even get like money. Some people get sponsorships and some people get endorsed, like different endorsements. I do not. I like purely just do it out of my own like will, and more of like something like giving back to society as like, this is my charitable work that I can like, take out some time from my busy schedule and just help for help towards like women who do not have a voice in my country.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.